Conspiracies. We've all heard them. Shadowy cabals, secret programs, corrupt corporations. Most sound too wild to believe until the evidence shows up, because sometimes the crazy conspiracies turn out to be completely true. From the sugar industry secretly paying Harvard scientists, to the CIA dosing people with LSD. These aren't theories, they're historical facts. So buckle up, here are 5 real-life conspiracies that actually happened. Now on to number 1. In the 1960s, America was facing a health crisis, rising rates of heart disease. Scientists started pointing fingers, and sugar wasn't looking so sweet. The Sugar Research Foundation, a powerful industry lobby, decided they needed to change the story. So, they secretly paid Harvard scientists to write studies saying fat, not sugar, was the real danger. Those scientists were paid the equivalent of $50,000 in today's money, and their findings were conveniently published in one of the world's most respected medical journals, the New England Journal of Medicine. No one knew the sugar industry funded it. The paper downplayed every study that linked sugar to heart disease while exaggerating the dangers of fat. And it worked. The US government began recommending low-fat diets, and the food industry followed. Suddenly, grocery stores were full of low-fat foods, loaded with, you guessed it, sugar. Here is part of a more recent commercial advertising, just one of the many fat-free foods during the low-fat craze. This so-called low-fat craze dominated the 80s and 90s, leading millions of people to eat more sugar than ever, even as obesity and diabetes skyrocketed. It wasn't until 2016 that researchers uncovered the original sugar industry documents, proof that they'd shaped decades of nutrition advice. So yeah, Big Sugar literally bought science, and we still feel the effects today. Now on to number 2. Next up, the tobacco companies. We already know they lied about smoking being harmless for over 40 years, but here's the part most people don't know. Cigarette smoke wasn't just toxic, it was radioactive. Researchers at UCLA uncovered internal documents showing the tobacco companies knew as far back as 1959 that cigarettes contained a radioactive substance called polonium-210. That's right, smokers were literally inhaling radioactive particles. The industry's own scientists warned about it. They even found ways to remove the radiation, but they never used them. Why? Because the process would make nicotine less addictive. So instead of fixing it, they buried the research for 40 years. When scientists finally examined those documents, they discovered the companies had intentionally banned any publication mentioning tobacco's radioactivity. According to the UCLA study, this one decision likely condemned hundreds of thousands of smokers to early deaths. When confronted, tobacco companies brushed it off, saying polonium is naturally occurring. Sure, so is uranium. Doesn't mean you should smoke it. This was one of the most horrifying examples of corporate deception in history, and it was completely real. Now on to number 3. Okay, this next one might hit close to home, especially if you've ever thought, man, my old iPhone feels slower every time a new one comes out. Well, turns out you were right. In 2017, Apple admitted it had been deliberately slowing down older iPhones through software updates. Their explanation? It was to protect your phone's aging battery and prevent crashes, but they never told customers. This only came to light after a Reddit user ran benchmark tests showing their old iPhone sped back up the moment they replaced the battery. The result? Outrage and lawsuits. France's consumer watchdog fined Apple 25 million euros, that's around $27 million USD, for deceptive practices. Apple eventually apologized, added battery transparency settings, and offered cheap replacements. But the damage was done. Millions of customers were convinced Apple had purposely slowed phones to force upgrades, a belief so common it's now called planned obsolescence. And while Apple denies that intent, they did admit the slowdown. So yeah, the Apple slows old iPhones conspiracy, that one turned out to be true. Maybe you weren't imagining it after all. Now on to number 4. Ever wonder why your light bulbs always seem to die around the same time? Well, that's not an accident. Back in the 1920s, the world's biggest light bulb companies, including General Electric, Philips, and Osram, formed a secret alliance called the Phoebus Cartel. Their goal: to make bulbs burn out faster. At the time, bulbs could last up to 2,500 hours, sometimes even more. One light bulb in a California fire station has been glowing since 1901, over a century. But that was bad for business. Once people bought bulbs that never died, sales dropped. So the companies got together and literally designed bulbs to fail, setting a new standard lifespan of just 1,000 hours. Believe it or not, they even fined manufacturers if their bulbs lasted too long. This was the birth of planned obsolescence, making products intentionally short-lived to keep people buying more. The cartel eventually dissolved after World War II, but the idea stuck. Today, it's not just light bulbs. From printers to smartphones, companies still use the same philosophy: profit through built-in expiration. So next time your gadget dies right after the warranty ends, remember the light bulb cartel. They wrote the playbook. Now on to number 5. And finally, the one that sounds straight out of a horror movie, but it's 100% real. In the 1950s, the CIA launched a top-secret program called MK Ultra. Their mission? To control the human mind. They experimented with LSD, hypnosis, electroshock, and sensory deprivation, often on people who didn't even know they were part of the experiments. Some were prisoners, some were patients in mental hospitals, others were random civilians. The CIA wanted to find a truth serum, a way to erase memories, reprogram the brain, and maybe even control behavior. The man behind it was a chemist named Sidney Gottlieb, sometimes called the real-life Dr. Frankenstein. He bought the world's entire supply of LSD and had hospitals test it on unsuspecting people, often through foundations, so no one knew the CIA was behind it. Even notorious mobster Whitey Bulger was dosed with LSD for over a year while in prison, told it was medical research. The results were horrifying. Subjects had mental breakdowns, long-term trauma, and in some cases, died. By the early 1960s, even the CIA admitted it hadn't produced any mind control breakthroughs, just destroyed lives. When the program was exposed, then, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered nearly all MK Ultra documents destroyed in 1973, but enough survived to prove it wasn't made up, it was real. Congressional hearings in the 1970s, the Church Committee exposed the truth. The US government had conducted covert human experiments for over a decade. So yeah, the CIA really did try to control minds. So, what do these 5 crazy conspiracies teach us? That the truth doesn't always come out right away, but it does come out. Sometimes it's corporations hiding danger, sometimes it's governments playing with power, and sometimes it's just the world being stranger than fiction. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit like, drop a comment about which conspiracy shocked you the most, and subscribe for more stories that prove reality can be way weirder than any theory.